Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday morning. The sun is shining, it's lovely, and you're here for chapter 4 of Oliver Twist. We left the last chapter, chapter 3, with Oliver Twist escaping, leaving the Undertakers, and he set his sights, went for a long walk to London. I think it was 71 miles. There he was hungry, he was tired, he fell asleep on the side of the road, and a boy passed him on the other side of the road and crossed the road to meet him, and that's where we meet Jack Dawkins, and referred to in here. He says, although some call me the Artful Dodger. So that's where we meet Jack Dawkins, and we continue with chapter 4 I should say, which begins in which Oliver meets Fagin and his wipe swipers. So here we go. Jack Dawkins led Oliver into the very heart of stony, treeless London. They passed huge churches, law courts and theatres, the oily, coiling River Thames, prisons, parks and palaces. Thousands of people, of every rank and profession, hurried by, while dogs and beggars sprawled in doorways. Broad avenues gave way to narrow alleyways full of tumbled-down houses. Amid the worst slums of all, where the houses seemed on the very point of falling down, desperate figures lurked in the dark windows. The Artful Dodger stepped suddenly in at a doorway. He gave a low whistle, called a password, then darted down some rickety stairs, dragging Oliver by the hand. Tripping and stumbling, Oliver arrived in a big cellar. There, bent over and a cooking pot like a witch over a cauldron, stood an old man. His rust-red hair burned like a flue above his dirty coat collar. When he turned round, his ugly face seemed to have been skewed in a place with a hooked nose as big as the beak of a vulture. "Ah, Dodger, my dear, who is this with you brought with you?" "This here is Oliver," said the Artful Dodger. "Oliver Twist. He's legging it from a master what didn't treat him with respect. Oliver, this is the kind, the generous Mr. Fagin." Oliver bowed. The room stirred. From every corner and crevice, boys stood up, their faces bright with welcome. "My name's Bates, Charlie Bates. Just call me Cags, everyone does. And me, I'm Flash Toby Crackit." They crowded round Oliver, shaking his hand, offering to take his jacket, even reaching into his pockets in case he was carrying something uncomfortably heavy. They were ragged, grubby boys, but their eyes had a shine Oliver had never seen in the workplace. Mesmerised by the smell of sausages cooking, Oliver gazed around him. A rack of silk handkerchiefs fluttered in the drought like a ship dressed over in flags. "Wipes," explained the old gentleman, following Oliver's gaze. "We have just looked them out for washing. Haven't we, boys? But let's hear how hard my boys have worked today. Dodger, what do you make of it?" "2 wallets," said Jack Dawkins. "Lined?" "See for yourself." The Artful Dodger pulled out the wallets from the deep pockets of his coat. Oliver was astounded that the Artful Dodger should be able to make something so fine. "And you, Cags?" said Fagin. "Wipes," said Cags, and pulled out 2 silk handkerchiefs. Fagin inspected the work closely. Good. But these initials embroidered here, they have to be unpicked." Oliver was amazed. Fancy a boy being able to embroider silk so delicately. "How would you like to make such things, my dear?" Fagin inquired, turning to Oliver. "I'd like that very much indeed, sir," answered Oliver. He could not understand why Charlie Bates began to hoot with laughter. Fagin and his boys played a quaint game that night. Fagin decked out with a pocket watch, a cravat pin, 2 wallets, a purse, and 4 or 5 handkerchiefs, minced or strode or waddled or tiptoed or limped about the room in such a comical way that Oliver laughed till he wept. Meanwhile, the Brotherhood of Boys tried to take things from Fagin without being spotted. Whenever they did, the old man praised them as warmly as a father. Could it be that this cheery, tender-hearted old fellow looked after this whole swarm of scruffy boys? No wonder, then, that he had nothing left to spend on clothes or home comforts for himself. With a meal of sausages inside him, Oliver fell asleep as soon as he was shown a bed to sleep in. Next day, the other boys rose and went out about their day's business, but Oliver slept on. Even when he woke, he did not stir at once. It was pleasant to float between waking and sleeping. He was aware of the old man scraping a saucepan with a spoon, moving about the room, bending to lift something heavy. Oliver finally parted his eyelids. Fagin was peering into a small oak box, leering with pleasure. Dipping in 2 bony fingers, he plucked up a gold watch studded with gems. There were 6 more like it. There were rings and necklaces, bracelets and brooches, too. There were things so fancy that Oliver could not even give them a name, but the sparkle made the old man's eyes glitter. Oliver knew this because eyes were looking directly at him. Clack, the box lid shut. Awake? What's your name? Weren't you asleep? Snooping, were you? Did you see? Fagin picked up a bread knife and lunged across the room towards Oliver. Please, sir, I couldn't sleep any more. Did you see them? Did you see my pretties? The bread knife trembled almost as much as Oliver. Yes, sir, said Oliver, who never told a lie. They're mine, see, declared the old man, saving comfort for my old age. Understand? Oliver nodded, his blue eyes round and innocent. Suddenly, Fagin put down the knife, snickering nervously. Just you fetch over that bucket of water, will you, young Oliver? And by the time Oliver had returned with the bucket, the old treasure box was gone, returned in a twinkling to its hiding place. How would you like to learn a trade, Oliver, my dear? Said Fagin, oozing friendliness once again. The one those other boys were learning last night. He poked a handkerchief into the breast pocket of his snabby coat. All Oliver had to do was to pull it out without Fagin feeling it go. They practiced this game many times in the following weeks until Oliver was so clever that Fagin called him a most promising young gentleman. And yet still he was kept indoors. When the other boys went off to work in the mornings, Oliver stayed up in the apartment, unpicking embroidered initials or practicing Where's the Wallet with Fagin. When his boys came home and Fagin asked to see what they had made during the day, they showed him all the manner of valuable things. The best always came from the Artful Dodger. Model yourself on this boy, Fagin told Oliver, throwing an affectionate arm around the Artful Dodger. Make him your model, my dear. He will go a long way. A long, long way. There were visitors too. A jolly giggling girl with a red frock and cheeks to match came with messages for Fagin. Her name was Nancy, and Fagin's boys adored her, especially Charlie Bates, who was utterly lovesick. Sometimes Nancy's sweetheart came too to talk business with Fagin, a man called Bill Sykes, whose temper made Fagin look positively loving. Sykes growled more fiercely than the dog that skulked along behind him, and he smelled of drink and sweat and blood. At last, after several weeks, Oliver was allowed to make his first trip out of doors. Fagin put him in the care of the Artful Dodger and Charlie Bates and waved them goodbye from the top of the rotten, crumbling stairs. The Artful Dodger and Charlie Bates did not seem in any great hurry to get to work. They strolled along, hands in pockets, reading notices and looking in shop windows. Oliver strolled with them, wondering whether he would spend the day stitching wallets or embroidering wipes. Suddenly, the Artful Dodger's manner changed, like a dog that sees a rabbit. They were passing a bookstall where a wealthy white-haired gentleman stood browsing through the books on sale. The Artful Dodger crossed the road and stood just behind the old gentleman. Perhaps, thought Oliver, he was trying to read the book over his shoulder. Then a hand shot out and back. One moment a handkerchief lapped out of the gentleman's coat pocket. The next it was gone, crumpled into the Artful Dodger's fist until he turned and passed it to Charlie. Both boys set off running. The whole thing took seconds. Inside those seconds, Oliver understood everything. He understood how Fagin and his band of boys lived, and why they practiced long and hard. He understood the oak chest hidden under the floor and the 7 watches inside it. He also understood that he was a party to the crime. Feeling inside his pocket, Mr. Brownlow found his handkerchief gone and spun around, hoping to spot the thief. He saw a young, fair-haired boy, his face a picture of guilt, turn and start to run for all he is worth. "Stop! Thief!" called Mr. Brownlow, and then louder, "Stop! Thief!" And that's the end of chapter 4. Please join tomorrow morning when we read chapter 5, which is in which Oliver answers for his crimes. We'll find out whether he got caught, whether he's able to make an escape with Bates and with the Artful Dodger. Right, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Take care.